At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. In the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name's GeneralG. Let's begin. The training room was a cube of matte gray plating under flat, shadowless light. 3 hecaton, each a towering form of angled biometallic plates and coiled strength, circled their quarry. Crests of black metallic filaments rigid as drawn wire framed their heads as they swiveled. They were Cadre 9, or, as the lead drill commander Balkus called them, a living catalog of Alliance weaknesses. He fixed his stare on Tecton, the cadre's own hecaton. Tecton stood with his posture holding the rigid lines of a parade ground statue. "You," Balkus rumbled, his voice a low scrape of metal on rock. "Honorable Tecton of the hecaton. You honor our bloodline, but you surround yourself with this." A sharp flick of his 3-fingered hand encompassed the other 2 members. Pippet, a Stygian sonar navigator, held her own pocket of dimness even under the bright lights. Filaments so matte black they absorbed sight, and sound covered her motionless body. She angled her smooth, keratinous faceplate toward the commander, but 2 fine prehensile tendrils spouting from below her primary arms kept coiling and uncoiling. "A prey species hiding in darkness," Balkus sneered and turned from Pippet to the last squad member, and a soft-shelled mammal. Erin Vale met his stare. She kept her face still, her posture balanced but loose. To a hecaton, whose every muscle was coiled for action, her relaxed posture registered as disrespect. "Look at it," Balkus said, circling her. His 2 subordinates, Rusk and Hask, mirrored his movements, their heavy footfalls thudding softly on the padded floor. "Soft-skinned, limited articulation. Its bipedal locomotion is a study in instability. Tell me, mammal, what is your purpose here besides serving as a cautionary tale?" "To complete the exercises and win the prize money." Balkus drew back his jaws' hardened coverings, a threat display common to predators. "It thinks this is a game." He stopped directly in front of her, his massive frame eclipsing her. The camera drone, a sphere of mirrored metal, floated closer to capture the confrontation. "This is the crucible of combat, the honor of the warrior. Concept alien to your kind," he gestured with his chin. "Disarm me." Tecton's filaments stiffened. This departed from the standard orientation. This was for the cameras, a show of power. Rusk and Hask took up flanking positions, their stances loose, expecting little effort. Erin remained still. "What are the rules of engagement?" she asked. The 3 commanders laughed, a chorus of rocks tumbling down a chute. "Rules?" Balkus chuckled. "The rule is simple. You will attempt to take my weapon. You will fail. We will then demonstrate the consequences of that failure." "Understood," Erin said. She looked past him, directly at the camera drone. "For the record, the subject has authorized physical contact and waived standard rules against it." Balkus's grin tightened. "What are you prattling about, mammal? Get on with it." "Just clarifying the terms," she said. Then she moved. She shifted her weight from her back foot to her front, stepping into Balkus's space, crowding him and defying all combat doctrine. Every combat issue she had urged him to strike, but she used his half-second of confusion. Her left hand darted inside his guard, bypassing his plasma rifle. Her thumb dug into the nerve bundle on his inner wrist. His hand spasmed open. Her right hand was already moving elsewhere as the rifle fell. Instead, she pivoted on the ball of her foot, her body rotating with his. Her leg hooked behind his ankle, a simple lever. Balkus was a tower of muscle and bone, but physics answered to no one. His own forward momentum became his enemy. He crashed to the floor with a grunt that shook the room. The deck met him hard. Rusk, on her left, intervened, his hand reaching for her shoulder. Erin continued her spin. Her elbow, leading the turn, drove upward into the soft spot just below his jaw. A wet click echoed. Rusk's eyes rolled back in his head, and he crumpled. Hask lunged before Rusk hit the floor. Aaron met his charge by dropping to one knee, her shoulder striking the back of his knee joint. The joint buckled inward with a pop. Hask screamed, a high shriek of shock and pain, and went down, clutching his ruined leg. Hask's whimpering and the light's hum filled the silence. 3 Hecaton commanders lay on the floor. Balkus struggled to breathe. Rusk was unconscious. Hask whimpered. Aaron Vale stood over them, her breathing even. She nudged Balkus's fallen rifle with her boot's toe. She looked up at the camera crew, now motionless, then at her own squad mates. "Was that correct?" she asked. Begin confessional segment, Cadre 9, post, orientation. The frame shows Tecton of the Hecaton. He sits with his back rigid in the interview chair, his metallic filaments flared. The wall behind him is a neutral gray. Tecton. The human's movements were illogical. She ignored the formal stances of the Argent Coil, the foundational principles of orbital combat. She bypassed superior form, opting instead to disassemble her opponents. She identified the points where they ceased to function as warriors and applied pressure. The technique was inefficient, disturbingly so. A warrior's honor is in the duel, the meeting of strength and skill. Her method was field stripping a malfunctioning rifle. The frame cuts to Pipit. The Stygian's 2 fine manipulator tendrils are calibrating a complex-looking tool. Her head swivels minutely, scanning the interview room with inaudible sonar pings. Pipit. My pre-confrontation threat assessment models, based on mass, biomechanics, and combat records, predicted a near-zero probability of a favorable outcome for contestant Vale. The simulation omitted a strategy of simply breaking the opponent's joints. I have since updated my heuristics. The human is an unpredictable element. My new models are crashing. The processing power required to anticipate her actions exceeds a standard fusion core's output. This is suboptimal. The frame cuts to Aaron Vale. She sits calmly, her hands resting in her lap. She blinks slowly at the camera. Aaron. They told me to disarm him. They specified only the outcome, not the methods or his condition afterward. In search and rescue, you learn to be creative with regulations and equipment to save lives. When an unstable subject becomes a threat to the team, you neutralize the threat as quickly and safely as possible. Posture and speeches are liabilities. You solve the problem so you can get back to the main objective. She leans forward slightly, her tone direct. Aaron. Speaking of which, the grand prize is 500,000 Alliance credits. According to my projections, that's enough to purchase a decommissioned Series 3 orbital habitat and a starter herd of 20 Angora coats, bred for microgravity. The self-contained farm is viable. The goats provide fleece for the luxury market, and their methane powers the station. The commanders were just a variable in the equation, a loud, scaly variable. The shot cuts to a flashy graphic. Explosions, lasers. The words, Cohort Carnage, splash across the screen in letters of white-hot metal. A bombastic voiceover kicks in. Voiceover. They are the best, the brightest, the bravest warriors from 100 worlds. They've come to the anvil to prove their mettle in the galaxy's most grueling test of skill. But can they survive Cohort Carnage? Tonight, meet Cadre 9 as they face the first challenge, the Corrosive Gambit. End confessional segment. The challenge room was vast and humid, smelling of chlorine and bitter chemicals. A massive circular tank dominated the space's center, its contents a viscous, sickly green liquid, bubbling sluggishly. A glowing data pylon shimmered at the bottom. The objective is simple, recruits, boomed the voice of Leon, the show's flamboyant producer, over the intercom. Retrieve the pylon. The liquid is a mild bioacid. Your issued enviro suit should protect you for a time. Begin in 5 minutes. Tecton snapped on his helmet, polishing the visor with a microfiber cloth. The Hecaton are forged for harsh environments. he announced, his voice tinny through his helmet's external speaker. "Our lamina offers a natural resistance to environmental hazards. This will be trivial." Pippet stood before a diagnostic console, her suit plugged into the port. Readouts flickered in the air around her as she ran a third-party integrity check on every seal and joint. "Trivial is a subjective assessment," she muttered, her manipulator tendrils adjusting a pressure valve by a fraction of a millimeter. "The suit's outer layer degrades with every minute of exposure. Accounting for fluid dynamics and potential friction against the pylon's casing, we have about 6 minutes of safe immersion time." Erin knelt on the floor, opening a compact medkit marked with a red cross. From it, she unspooled a wide roll of amber-colored tape. The thick, semi-rigid tape had a fibrous texture. She meticulously applied strips of it to her suit's major points: elbows, knees, and flexible seals around her waist and neck. Pippet's head snapped in Erin's direction, her internal sonar mapping the strange activity. "What are you doing? That is industrial bonding tape that is unauthorized. Use of non-standard equipment is a violation of paragraph 12, subsection C of the contestant agreement." "It's from my SAR kit," Erin said, pressing a final piece firmly against her shoulder joint. "Regulations permit personal life-saving gear. It's rated to patch plasma pipes. It'll hold against sour water." "But the regulations," Pippet insisted. "The flex rating of the joints will be compromised. Your mobility will be reduced." "I'll take stiffness over a suit full of acid," Erin replied, standing up and testing her range of motion. Her movement was a little stiff, but functional. She grabbed her helmet. A klaxon blared, signaling the challenge's start. Tecton, with a roar, took a running leap and dove into the tank. He struck the acid in a geyser of green, his powerful limbs immediately churning the liquid as he powered his way toward the bottom. Pippet, after a final despairing glance at Erin's modified suit, entered the tank via the ladder. Erin followed, climbing down the ladder and slipping into the tank. The green liquid was thick, like swimming through cold syrup. The murky fluid swallowed the light. She could see Tecton below, a thrashing silhouette already halfway to the pylon. He was fast, but he burned energy at an incredible rate. She swam, not with Tecton's brute force, but with a slow, steady combat sidestroke. The technique was designed for moving casualties through rough water, maximizing efficiency over speed. She conserved her breath, her movements deliberate. As she passed a jagged piece of decorative metalwork on the tank's wall, likely placed there by the producers to add some visual flair, she felt a snag, a sharp, tearing sensation at her hip. A crimson alert bloomed on her heads-up display. Warning: hull breach detected. Seal integrity compromised. A thin stream of green acid seeped through the tear, hissing as it met the suit's inner layer. An alarm pulsed in her ear, a calm voice announcing atmospheric pressure failure imminent. Down below, Tecton reached the pylon. His thrashing stirred up the sediment at the tank's bottom, clouding the water completely. He swam upward, disoriented. Pippet, descending methodically, froze. Her training dictated she should abort to help a compromised squad mate. The show's rules required her to continue the mission. Erin registered the alarm as another piece of data. She reached into her belt's utility pouch and pulled out another folded strip of the bonding tape. Tucking her chin, she worked by feel, finding the gash in the suit's fabric. The acid stung her fingers through her gloves. Working by feel, she guided the folded patch through the gash in the suit's outer fabric. Once inside, she unfolded it and pressed the adhesive side firmly against the inner surface of the hole. The tape's chemical accelerant reacted with the suit material and hardened instantly, forming a rigid, ugly, but effective seal. The alarm cut off, seal integrity restored. She resumed her steady sidestroke. By the time Tecton surfaced, gasping and dragging the pylon, Erin was already waiting for him, perched on the tank's edge. She used the ladder. He stared at her, his chest heaving, the heavy pylon clutched in his arms. He held the objective, but she beat him out of the water by a full minute. She offered him a hand up. He brushed it aside, hauling himself over the edge and dropping the pylon with a loud clang. "Victory without spectacle," he gasped, "is merely efficient task completion." Erin looked at the ugly, hardened patch on her hip. "Yeah, that's the idea." The mess hall on the anvil served reconstituted rations in 6 different colors, all tasting vaguely of boiled soy. Tecton sat at a separate table, his back to Erin. He disassembled and cleaned his plasma rifle, a ritual he performed after every exercise. He snapped each component of his rifle back into place with punishing force. To him, her victory was a circumvention of the challenge, a technicality exploited by a creature prizing utility over spectacle. Pippet sat across from Erin, her food untouched. She propped her datapad against a salt shaker and ran a simulation of the bonding tape's chemical properties under extreme duress. "The tensile strength is remarkable," she chirped, her manipulator tendrils typing. "The molecular bonds form a near-perfect lattice. Theoretically, you could patch a starship's hull with this, for approximately 3 seconds. Still, an interesting outlier." Erin focused on her meal, a nutrient-dense ration bar with the texture of compressed sawdust, and a datapad of her own. The title on the screen read, "Advanced Husbandry, Parasite Mitigation in Low-Gravity Ungulates." In a darkened observation room high above the station's public areas, 2 figures watched the mess hall feed on a large screen. Leon, the showrunner, a Klex with a body arranged in a radical symmetry of 3 arms and 3 legs, gestured emphatically. 2 limbs pointed at the screen, a third tracing frantic circles in the air. "She's poison, Corrado! Absolute poison for the ratings!" he complained. "The drama fizzled. A suit tear should be a 5-minute sequence of rising tension, panicked breathing, maybe a dramatic rescue. She just patched it, like a plumber fixing a leaky pipe. The result is anticlimactic. The viewers want heroes, not janitors." Prefect Corrado watched the screen and remained silent. The Kaladesh's hulking shape of dark, wiry bristles absorbed the room's energy. A web of old scars pulled at one eye's corner. He kept his stare on the quiet human reading about goats. "The hecaton is pure bravado, perfect for the cameras. The little Stygian is a bundle of nerves, great for manufactured jeopardy." Leon continued, pacing on his 3 legs. "But the human, she solves the problem with methodical efficiency. She lacks struggle, flair." The corner of Corrado's mouth twitched upward. He leaned forward, his deep baritone rumbling through the quiet room. "Continue the tests," he said. "Escalate." The next challenge took place in a labyrinth built inside a hollowed-out, spinning asteroid tethered to the station. The spin created a weak, inconsistent gravity along the outer walls, while the core was a true zero-G environment. Their goal? Navigate the shifting maze and reach the control room at the center. Tecton, as was his way, relied on instinct and doctrine. "The flow of a battle is like a river," he declared at the start, striking a heroic pose for a nearby camera drone. "A warrior flows with the current, he becomes one with it." He then used his knowledge of how shots bounce and angle in tight spaces to navigate the corridors, treating every corner as a potential ambush point. Pippet approached it analytically. She hovered at the entrance, her head rotating as she sent out a complex series of sonar pings. A shimmering wire frame of the maze coalesced above her wrist device. "The optimal path is a recursive spiral, accounting for the asteroid's rotation," she announced. "Success is highly probable if we follow this routine precisely." Erin followed Pippet for about 5 minutes before she grew impatient with the constant stopping and starting. During one of Pippet's lengthy calculations, Erin noticed a small panel on the floor, flush with the decking. A maintenance conduit, promising a shortcut. She pried it open and slipped inside while the others consulted their map. The conduit was dark, cramped, and quiet. She felt the low thrum of the station's life support through the conduit. She learned in search and rescue about service tunnels, the secret circulatory system of any structure. Slower, they connected everything. She pulled herself along pipes and cables, navigating by feel. She paused. A subtle, constant vibration ran through one large conduit, different from the station's ambient hum. She saw faint scuff marks along its access panels, signs that maintenance crews used it frequently. A service highway. She followed the conduit. After 10 minutes, it terminated at a large junction hub. A heavy-looking service hatch sat adjacent to it, unlatched from this side. She popped it open. Curious, she poked her head out. She was looking directly into a brightly lit control room, filled with monitors showing different maze sections. A large red button labeled Objective sat on a console in the room's middle. A moment later, Tecton burst through the main entrance, sweating and breathing heavily. A new scratch scored his helmet, and his rifle was slung over his back. He clearly fought his way there. Pippet floated in behind him, looking equally exhausted, her filaments slightly ruffled. They both froze, staring at Erin as she floated out of a maintenance hatch in the ceiling. She looked around the room, then at them. "Oh, is this the center? I think I took a wrong turn." Tecton just stared, his mouth worked silently. Pippet's head spun a full circle, as if trying to recalibrate her entire understanding of reality. Erin drifted over and pressed the big red button. A triumphant chime echoed through the labyrinth. The mess hall was nearly deserted. At a small table in the corner, Tecton and Pippet were huddled together, speaking in low tones. A half-eaten block of green rations sat between them, forgotten. "I found a new initiative," Tecton said, his voice a low rumble. He placed his large hands flat on the table, as if officiating a treaty. "Henceforth, we are the cohort for the understanding and mitigation of the human anomaly." Pippet tapped a nervous rhythm on the table with one of her manipulator tendrils. "A worthy goal. The acronym, however, is inefficient. I propose a revised designation. The Erin Survival Group." Tecton considered this. "Concise, accurate, I accept." He leaned closer. "We must establish a predictive model. Her actions are chaotic, but an underlying logic must exist. I have been reviewing the footage from the labyrinth. My theory? She fights the environment, not the opponent. The terrain itself becomes her primary weapon. She disregards opponent-focused stances entirely." "A fascinating, though untestable hypothesis," Pippet countered, pulling up her datapad. "My analysis suggests a different conclusion. Contestant Vale eschews strategy. She is a walking statistical improbability. Things simply work out for her. The service conduit she chose, it bypassed the objective path entirely. The odds were astronomical." "So she is lucky?" Tecton's filaments bristled at the notion. "A warrior made his own luck." "Luck is a term used by the intellectually unprepared to describe uncalculated variables," Pippet said primly. "She is an uncalculated variable. Our survival and our success in this competition depends on treating her as such. We must stop predicting her actions and instead focus on mitigating the consequences." They sat in silence for a moment, two of the most promising military candidates of their respective species, struggling to reconcile their training with their teammate. They formed a support group to deal with their human teammate. For the third test, the producers decided to focus on psychological warfare. Each contestant would face, one-on-one, a telestic geist, a psionic entity without physical form. The telestic geist projected a target's greatest, most crippling fear directly into their consciousness, incapacitating them. Tecton went first. He strode into the stark white chamber, his back straight, his head high. The air shimmered as if above hot pavement, and the geist formed within the distortion. For a moment, Tecton stood firm. Then he faltered, his eyes widening. He saw the spirits of his ancestors, 1,000 generations of legendary Hecaton warriors, turning their backs on him in shame. He saw them break their ceremonial blades and cast the shards at his feet. A raw roar tore from his throat. Two medics dragged him out. Pippet was next. Her fear was abstract and deeply terrifying. The Geist showed her a series of fatal errors scrolling across a projection of her suit's code. She saw her sonar feed dissolve into static, her life support fail, her power core go critical. She curled into a tight, feathery ball on the floor, emitting a high-frequency distress signal that made the observation glass vibrate. Erin entered next. She walked into the room, saw the distortion in the air, and waited. The Geist, energized from the fears of the first two contestants, turned its psychic attention to the human. It delved into her mind, searching for the deep-seated terror to break her, and it found it. The sterile white room around Erin dissolved, replaced by a different sterile white room, an office. An endless beige office stretching to the horizon, filled with cubicles and the low hum of atmosphere processors. On a desk in front of her sat a stack of data slates. A disembodied voice, flat and inflectionless, echoed through the space. "Welcome to your preliminary audit, Miss Vale." The Geist projected the full weight of her deepest fear, galactic bureaucracy. It showed her Galactic Revenue Service Form 1138C, Declaration of Specified Atmospheric Contaminants for Imported Livestock. It showed her Subsection G, Manure Particulate Waivers for Atypical Methane-Based Ruminants. It showed her appendices, addendums, and footnotes contradicting each other. Erin looked at the endless office. She looked at the mountain of paperwork. She sighed, a long, weary sound. She picked up a materialized stylus from the desk. "Okay," she muttered. "Let's get this over with." She filled out the first form. The Telestic Geist reeled, expecting screams, terror, a mental breakdown. Compliance was outside the Geist's framework. As Erin focused on the intricacies of tariff codes and agricultural subsidies, the sheer grinding monotony of human paperwork began to overwhelm it. The distortion in the air flickered. With a psychic screech of agony and boredom, the Telestic Geist dematerialized and fled the chamber. Erin was left alone in the white room, blinking. "Huh," she said. "Guess the audit's over." She walked out, leaving the producers and Prefect Corrado staring at their monitors. Begin confessional segment. Post-test 3. The Telestic Geist is visible on the screen. It is a vaguely humanoid distortion of light, currently wrapped in a thermal foil blanket and sipping a calming nutrient solution through a straw. Its voice is a series of soft, weary chimes, translated by a nearby device. Geist, translated. "I have feasted on the nightmares of dying stars. I have tasted the existential dread of black holes. I have seen a warrior's honor curdle into shame and an engineer's logic escape into chaos. But the subparagraphs, the sheer, weaponized mundanity. I looked into the human soul and found a glossary of tax law. I need to lie down for a century." Cut to Leon, the showrunner. He has his head in one of his 3 hands, his other 2 tangled together. "The viewers love her. They're calling her the administrator on the public data nets. They've launched a supporter collective. How do I make compelling television out of someone who defeats an ancient psychic horror by being really, really good at paperwork? I'm producing a military competition. This is supposed to be about glory, not interplanetary shipping manifests." Cut to Tecton and Pippet, sitting together for their confessional. They sat closer together than in their previous confessional, a shared resignation in their posture. Tecton: "We have reached a consensus." Pippet: "The human operates outside any level of strategy we can comprehend. Her thought processes are alien to a degree, defying all known models of sentient thought." Tecton: "To attempt to understand her is to invite madness. Our previous efforts were flawed. The goal is to adapt, not predict." Pippet: "Survival, therefore, is contingent upon anticipating the local absurdity of her next action and positioning ourselves to capitalize on the inevitable, chaotic success that follows. We will observe, we will endure, we will stay clear of the backlash." End confessional segment. The remaining contestants stood in the main briefing hall. A rigid focus replaced the easy posture of the early days. Prefect Corrado stood before them, his massive frame radiating an authority that made the show's theatrics feel cheap and distant. "Your final challenge will be a team-based live-fire ship-boarding exercise," Corrado rumbled, his voice absolute. "Your opponents will be Legionnaire-class combat robots. Lethality settings will be variable. Your objective is to secure the target vessel's bridge." A murmur went through the room. This was it, the grand finale. "For this final stage," Corrado continued, his scarred eye looking at each of them individually, "all environmental and security overrides for the simulations sector will be routed through the production booth. You will follow their every direction instantly. This will test your ability to function as a cohesive unit under maximum external pressure." He looked directly at Cadre 9. "Tecton, Pipit, Vale, you are one unit." Tecton slammed a fist against his chest, a salute. Pipit gave a short, jerky nod, her manipulator tendrils checking the seals on her helmet. Erin looked distracted, perhaps wondering if she'd left the hydroponics on in her quarters. The simulation perfectly replicated an Alliance light cruiser. The corridors were dark, lit only by emergency strobes casting long, dancing shadows. Cadre 9 moved in formation. Tecton on point, his rifle sweeping every corner. Pipit in the middle, her datapad glowing as she coordinated their movements and sliced through automated security. Erin covered the rear, her steps silent, her head on a constant slow swivel. "2 robots, 10 meters ahead, behind the cargo containers," Pipit whispered over their squad comms. "Their patrols are rudimentary. On my mark." The exercise was proceeding smoothly. They moved from cover to cover, Tecton taking point, Pipit disabling automated defenses, and Erin covering the rear. Their shots dropped the robots before they could return fire. Then the station lurched. A deep, grinding shudder, a genuine jolt, threw all of them against the wall. Red alert claxtons blared, their frantic, piercing shriek far more urgent than the simulated alarms. Pipit's datapad screen, previously showing a tactical map, suddenly filled with raw data. Real data. "Warning, hull breach detected, Sector 12G. Warning, atmospheric pressure dropping, habitation ring 4. Warning, hostile vessel docked, Bay 3. A voice screamed over the station-wide comm system. The voice was new, thin with terror. "Hostiles on the station! Repeat, we are under attack! This is not a drill! Security to—" The voice cut out into static. The wall to their left exploded inward in a shower of shredded metal and vaporized insulation. The blast sent them sprawling. Through the swirling smoke and dust stepped 2 figures, not robots, but armored pirates. Their mismatched gear was covered in the grit of a dozen illegal raids. They carried scavenged military hardware, weapons humming with energy. The lead pirate raised his weapon. A bolt of crimson plasma, searing and real, slammed into the camera drone following them. The drone vaporized with a silent flash. The live feed cut to static. Leon's panicked voice shrieked over their squad comm. "What's happening? Corrado, the overrides are inert! The system is locked out! Get them out of there!" The channel went dead. Tecton and Pipit scrambled to their feet, raising their training rifles. Tecton fired a bolt, sparking harmlessly against the lead pirate's chest plate. The pirate laughed. A grating sound filtered through his helmet speaker. They were frozen, their opponents real, their weapons fake. The pirates raised their weapons to finish them off. In the instant of the explosion, something inside Erin Vale shifted. Her gaze sharpened, her body settled into a new kind of readiness. She took in the breach, the pirates, her teammates positioned, in a single glance. Her voice cut through the ringing in their ears, sharp and clear. "Pipit, get off the squad comm! Interface with the station's core network! Find Corrado! Find station security! Find anyone with a real gun! Tecton, with me! We're holding this choke point!" She acted as one. She dropped her useless training rifle, spun on her heel, and ripped a heavy crimson-painted fire extinguisher from its mount on the wall. The first pirate was stepping through the breach, his weapon leveled. Erin bypassed his armor, swinging the heavy canister in a low, brutal arc, connecting with his knee joint. A crunch of metal and bone echoed. As he went down, she swung the extinguisher up, a powerful backhand blow slamming into his helmet's side, shattering his visor and caving in his skull. The second pirate stared, stunned by the sudden violence. Tecton, galvanized by Erin's action, let out a furious roar and charged. He used his training weapon as a club, slamming the heavy stock into the pirate's rifle, and then driving his armored shoulder into the pirate's chest, sending him crashing back into the corridor beyond. Pippet looked from the downed pirate to Erin's focused expression. Her fingers flew across her datapad, now attacking a live, hostile system. Their fighting retreat was a controlled tactical withdrawal. "Pippet, that power conduit above the next intersection! Can you overload it?" Erin shouted over the sound of plasma fire. "The breakers are shielded," Pippet called back, her fingers a blur. "Surge them past the breakers! Blow the lights!" "That is a flagrant violation of Alliance maintenance protocols," Pippet shrieked, but she did it. A second later, the corridor ahead plunged into absolute darkness, followed by the sound of sizzling electronics and the screams of pirates whose optical sensors fried. They rounded a corner, and a fresh wave of pirates opened up on them from down the hall. "Tecton, that wall panel!" Erin pointed. "Rip it free! Cover!" Tecton acted at once. He jammed his fingers into a large maintenance panel's seam and heaved. With a groan of tortured metal, the heavy plate tore free from the wall. He slammed it down in the corridor's middle, creating an instant, waist-high barricade. Plasma bolts ricocheted off its surface. At Erin's direction, Pippet weaponized the ship's systems. Emergency sprinklers became electrified traps. Coolant vents blasted noxious, supercooled gas into pirate-filled corridors. The simulated cruiser became a death trap, and Cadre 9 were its architects. They fell back through the twisting corridors, leaving a trail of disabled pirates and sabotage systems behind them. Their destination was the training sector's main control room, the production booth. It was the most defensible position they could think of. When they blew the door, they found the battle already raging. Prefect Corrado and a handful of black-clad commandos, his personal guard, Erin realized, were using the consoles as cover, exchanging fire with a dozen pirates pinning them down. Leon, the showrunner, was curled up under a console, whimpering. The pirate leader, a massive biped whose skull was crudely reinforced with riveted slabs of alloy, cornered Corrado. The Kaladesh bled from a shoulder wound, his return fire becoming sporadic. Erin's eyes darted around the room, assessing the pirates, Corrado's position, and the equipment. She saw the massive multi-lensed holographic projector hanging from the ceiling. The size of a small vehicle, it hummed with latent power. "Pippet!" Erin yelled, her voice cutting through the battle's din. "That projector! Can you access its power core?" "Of course! I rerouted its primary feed myself for the Labyrinth Challenge. Divert all available power to it. Everything! The lights, life support, inertial dampeners, all of it!" "Well, that'll black out the entire sector." "I know! Do it! Tecton, cover her!" Tecton let out a battle cry and fired measured bursts from a fallen pirate's plasma rifle, forcing the attackers to keep their heads down. Pippet's manipulator tendrils blurred over her console, her faceplate reflecting the frantic scrolls of code. Lights flickered and died across the room as power was shunted from every secondary system. The projector on the ceiling whined, a low thrum growing into a piercing shriek. "Now!" Erin screamed. Pippet slammed her palm onto the console. The projector activated at a power level it was never designed to handle. It unleashed a silent subsonic pulse, vibrating deep in their bones, and a strobing chaotic torrent of multispectral light. An agonizing visual assault. The pirates screamed, dropping their weapons to clutch at their heads. The Kaladesh, the Hecaton, even Pippet reeled from the assault, but Erin pushed through the pain. The pirate leader, blinded and stunned, staggered back from Corrado. In that moment of confusion, Tecton lunged forward. He delivered a single strike with his rifle's butt that crushed the pirate's helmet and sent him to the floor. Erin and Corrado's team moved through the disoriented pirates, subduing them. Moments later, the commandos secured the disoriented pirates. The hum of the dying projector and groans from defeated pirates filled the silence. In the aftermath, amidst the smoke, the acrid scent of fried electronics, and the flickering emergency lights, Prefect Corrado walked over to where Cadre 9 was leaning against a scorched bulkhead, catching their breath. He shed his relaxed posture, adopting a commander's rigid bearing. He held a med patch against the plasma burn on his shoulder. "The pirate attack was genuine," he said, his voice a low growl. "They are a clan of scavengers. The final test was meant to be a surprise simulation against my own commandos. I lowered specific security protocols to allow them access. Our intelligence indicated this sector was clear. That intelligence was wrong. The pirates were more opportunistic than we anticipated. Your response to a genuine, unplanned crisis was more revealing than any test I could have designed. This constituted the final exam." Tecton and Pippet stared at him, their exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "Congratulations," Corrado said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "You have all passed." He explained everything. Cohort Carnage was a facade, a carefully constructed psychological gauntlet designed to find candidates for the Umbral Command. The constant observation, the unpredictable challenges, the manufactured pressure, it was all designed to strip away doctrine and reveal a person's core abilities. They sought soldiers who could function when the orders stopped making sense. "We create chaos," Corrado rumbled, "to see who can create order from it." He offered them a position, a lifetime appointment to the most elite, most secret special operations unit in the Galactic Alliance. Tecton stood taller. This was the honor he had sought, affirmed on a level he never knew existed. Pippet's small hands twitched, but she held her head high. Erin wiped a smear of soot from her cheek. "Hold on," she said. "Exam? So the prize money is off the table?" For the first time since meeting him, Prefect Corrado barked a short laugh. "Ha! The Alliance will be directing a substantial agricultural grant to a new enterprise in the Sol system, Ms. Vale. Consider it a recruitment incentive." He turned to Leon, who was now staring blankly at a smoking console, his show in ruins. Corrado tossed him a data chip. "Here is your season finale. The official story is that the pirate attack was a surprise test, the most realistic simulation ever staged. Your non-disclosure agreement is now a matter of Alliance security. I suggest you honor it." He turned back to the squad. "Get to the medbay. Your real training starts at 0600 ship time." 3 weeks later, the sleek black corridor ran through the belly of an Umbral Command infiltration vessel, the air tasting of filtered sterility. Erin, Tecton, and Pippet walked side by side, all dressed in the same plain black fatigues, the unit's uniform. "The mission parameters are clear," Tecton was saying, his voice resonating with newfound purpose. "A covert infiltration of the Karanan Collective's primary data hub on Cygnus X1. We breach the outer defenses, Pippet slices into their local network, and we plant the logic bomb. Minimal engagement, maximum subterfuge." "The primary obstacle will be their quantum encryption," Pippet added, consulting a wrist-mounted screen. "But I have developed a counter-algorithm creating a window of vulnerability lasting approximately 37 seconds. Success is probable, assuming we maintain a concealed entry vector." They both turned to Erin, their new de facto commander, expecting tactical input. She was studying a datapad, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Are you reviewing the target's structural weak points, Commander Vale?" Pippet asked. Erin shook her head, her eyes fixed on the screen. "Comparing the milk-fat content of Nubian goats versus the fleece density of Angoras under variable gravity conditions," she said, her attention on the screen. "The dilemma is real. Higher fat content is better for cheese production, but the luxury textile market for Angora fleece is more stable. This is a question of reliable income versus personal satisfaction." Tecton and Pippet exchanged a long, resigned look. They were elite operatives, ghosts who walked between the stars, undertaking missions that would shape the galaxy's fate. And they were led by a woman waging a one-person war against intergalactic tax law to fund her orbital goat farm. They fell into step behind her. Their path forward would be strange.